Okay, so everybody ready to start?
Yes, Bande.
Okay, so we will begin. We do 3 bows to the Buddha. 1, 2, 3. And then I'll recite 3 times the homage to the Buddha. And let me mute. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so good morning, everybody. Okay, so now with this sutta, we are beginning the group of third 50. So the suttas in the Book of Fours in the Anguttara Nikaya are organized into groups of 50. So we've already gone through the first 2 groups of 50. At least we've taken a major portion of those suttas. Now we come to the third group, and then we have the first chapter within this group. It's given the name, it's just named after the first sutta in the group, but I would call it the suttas of similes. Though many other suttas have similes, but all of these suttas in this chapter center around similes. And the similes are often constructed around the same pattern that we've come across several times already. It's the kind of logical pattern of A plus not B, not A plus B, not A plus not B, and A plus B. So it's a quite simple kind of logical framework that's used for these suttas. And then what I've done is to reorganize the suttas in this chapter. Maybe can you see my additional word file called Themes of Similes?
Yes, Bande.
Yes, Bhante.
Yeah, so what I've done is to reorganize them a bit. So we have 3 groups in which there are several suttas which illustrate basically the same point, but using different similes. And then, so we have 3 groups like that. And then there are 2 suttas, which the way I see them, don't fit neatly into any of these groups. So I call them unclassified. So let us take them in that order rather than the order in which they're laid out in the Anguttara Nikaya. So we'll start with 102. So this is the sutta on clouds. And so, but to get the simile, we have to take the first sutta. So there are 4 kinds of clouds. So what are the 4? So there's the cloud that thunders but does not rain, the one that rains but does not thunder, the one that neither thunders nor rains, oops, and the one that both thunders and rains. So you could see how it's developed according to the A, the different permutations of A and B, positive and negative. Okay, so that is the simile. So now we're going to have the exposition. So this exposition, the way I describe it, it's laid out in terms of the relationship between learning or intellectual knowledge of the Dhamma and personal insight or realization, the realization that comes through practice. So we have the person who who thunders but does not rain. So what is meant by thundering here? So then we have the explanation. Someone masters the Dhamma, and then what is meant by Dhamma here is elaborated by 9 categories, which was an early scheme for classifying the types of Buddhist discourses. So let's see what these are in the Pali. So these are 9 categories for classifying discourses of the Buddha according to their type or subject matter or style, let's say the style or some special feature of those discourses. So first we have sutta, and nowadays we call all of the discourses of the Buddha, we call them all suttas. But it seems that there was a period where the word sutta was used in a rather narrow sense to refer to a discourse in the form of prose, straightforward prose. And I should say that there's some scholarly discussions and debates and differences of opinion about the exact meaning of all of these expressions. Okay, but sutta, we could say, is a discourse of the Buddha in straight prose without special elaboration. Okay, then Geyang is explained. The word Geya is actually from a root gi, which means to sing. So if you take it literally, it's that which is to be sung. But the way it's explained, let me see if I could get a commentary on this. Okay, so the commentary explains Geyang as a sutta that sagatakanga means with verses. So it's a sutta that is primarily in prose or contains a prose framework, and it includes verses. And it says specifically or especially that this refers to or could refer to the entire Sagata Vagga, that is the first book of the Samyutta Nikaya. Was in the first book of the Samyutta Nikaya, it's called the Sagataka Vagga or Sagata Vagga. All of the suttas, the framework is in prose, and there's an incident that takes place, and maybe there'll be a conversation or some exchange of words between the Buddha or some other monk and the other person in the sutta. And then the sutta will come to a consummation with a verse, but sometimes there'll be a series of verses. So if we could take as an example, let's just look for an example. Okay, so we take the first sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's called Crossing the Flood. So in the sutta, a deity, a deva, comes to the Buddha and asks him how he crossed the flood. Then the Buddha replies, without standing still and without struggling, I crossed the flood. And then the deity says, what do you mean? How is it that without standing still and without struggling, you crossed the flood? Then the Buddha says, when I remained standing, then I sank. And when I struggled to cross, then I got swept away. And then the deity, in response to that, recites a verse. So you can see here's prose and verse and many other suttas. Yeah, so we can see a lot of the suttas have prose. Sometimes the prose portion could get quite long. Yeah, like here, quite a long prose portion. But finally, it ends with some verses. And then here, there's a whole series of different deities come and recite verses. And then here's the discourses with the king of Kosala, King Pasenadi. Here, quite substantial prose portion, but each one ends with either one verse or a series of verses. So this is the meaning of Geya. Vyakarana, the word Vyakarana, means an explanation, an analysis, and the way the commentary explains this, and I don't agree. It says that the entire Abhidhamma Pitaka, as well as suttas without verses, and any other Buddha word which is not included in the other 8 groups, is Vyakarana. But the word Vyakarana means literally explanation, or also it could mean answer to questions. And so this can be a sutta. This would be my hypothesis, that the original meaning is a sutta in which somebody comes to the Buddha and asks a question, and then the Buddha gives the discourse as an answer to the question. An example of this, again, we'll find this in the Samyutta Nikaya. Perhaps it could include the famous Kachana Gota Sutta. This is Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 12, sutta number 15, where a monk by the name of Kachana Gota comes to the Buddha and says, Samaditi, samaditi, kitavata nuko bante samaditi. So he says, right view is said, O Venerable, in what way is there right view? And then the Buddha gives the discourse as an answer to that question. So this would be my, at least, working hypothesis, that this refers to a sutta in which somebody comes to the Buddha poses a question, and the sutta unfolds as an answer to that question. Okay, the next category is gata. The word gata means verse, and this would include suttas that consist exclusively of verse, or it could be just verses that are ascribed to the Buddha, but are not incorporated into anything that would be considered an independent sutta. Let's see what the commentary says. Too many windows open. No, I lost it. Okay, now we're back. Okay, so for Gata, it gives, as some examples, the Dhammapada. You know, the Dhammapada consists, I think, 26 chapters, all just in verses, and the verses are not tied together into a single sutta. Then there's a work called the Therigatha and the Therigatha, and then there are a number of suttas in the Sutta Nipata. For example, very popular suttas in the Theravada tradition are the Metta Sutta, the discourse on loving kindness, and the Ratana Sutta, the discourse on jewels, entirely in verse, no prose portion. So that is Gata. Then Udana, the word Udana originally means like a joyful, inspired utterance. And so we find sometimes on an occasion when the Buddha is observing some event taking place or reflecting on some theme, suddenly he will just recite a verse which expresses, or sometimes it's even a prose portion, which expresses his inspiration, joyful inspiration. And then a large number of suttas which include or which end with that utterance of that inspired utterance, that inspired exclamation, have been collected together into a work a little work included in the Sutta Pitaka called the Udana. Then Itivotaka, the word Itivotaka means thus it was said, and probably this term originally signified a large body of works, a large body of suttas in which somebody reported on something that the Buddha had said. But a number of suttas of that character have been collected together to form a book, again included in the minor collection of the Sutta Pitaka called the Itivutaka. Then Jataka, the word Jataka refers to an account that the Buddha sometimes gives in the suttas of events that took place involving himself in a past birth. And we find these scattered in individual suttas and in the commentaries. For example, in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 83, the Buddha gives an account of things that took place with himself in a past birth when he was a king who practiced the 4 Brahma Viharas. But a large number of verses concerning the Buddha's past births have been collected together to form a book of the Sutta Pitaka called the Jataka collection. And then there have been commentaries composed to those verses, which are necessary to understand the verses. So altogether, this forms the commentary and the original verses forms a large collection called the Jatakas. Some 547 stories about the past lives of the Buddha when he was an animal, a king, a prince, a merchant, and each one has a kind of moral message to convey. Then Abhuta Dhamma, this expression refers to a miraculous event. So often we have the expression acharya abhuta, things that are wonderful and marvelous. And it's really hard to think of a particular class of suttas that fall into that category. So just what the commentary says is that all suttas that are connected with wonderful and marvelous events or wonderful and marvelous qualities fit into this category. And then it cites as an example a sutta in which the Buddha says that there are these 4 wonderful and marvelous qualities about Ananda. This is in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 4, Sutta number 129. Okay, then Vedala, the word Vedala, the exact meaning of the word is not very clear. But the way the commentary explains it, it says that it's suttas in which there's an exchange of questions and answers going back and forth between the interrogator and the person who's answering, whether the Buddha himself or an eminent monk, or none, actually. It gives as examples the Chudala Vedala Sutta, which occurs as in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 44, in which the one who answers is the Bhikkhuni Dhammadina. Then the Mahavedala Sutta, that's a conversation between Sariputta and Moggallana. The Samaditi Sutta, that is a kind of question and answer back and forth between the group of monks and the Venerable Sariputta. The Sakkapanha Sutta, in which the person who asked the questions is Sakka, the king of the gods, and the Buddha is the one who answers. And then there are a number of other suttas in this category. Okay, so those are the 9. I got a little distracted, but those are the 9 categories in which different suttas have been classified according to their style, or their style or type. And so we have somebody here who masters the Dhamma, who learns the Dhamma and masters it intellectually. The verb used is pari yapunati. So that implies like to master by memorization, by being able to recite from memory, to be able to explain. But he does not understand as it really is. This is dukkha. This is the origin of dukkha. This is the cessation. This is the path to cessation. So what does this indicate? Understanding the 4 noble truths. It has this, usually in the suttas, it indicates a particular attainment. What is it? Anybody want to venture?
Sotapanna.
Right, correct. Who was it that said that?
I'm Anu Kulkarni, Venerable Bodhi.
Anu Kulkarni.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That is the mark of a sotapanna, a stream enterer, is realizing or penetrating with wisdom the 4 noble truths. So we who are not yet stream enterers, usually we could have some understanding, at least partial understanding, of the first noble truth, and we could see through experience that craving and other defilements give rise to suffering. But to actually see directly the cessation of suffering and to see the path that leads to the cessation of suffering requires the attainment of stream entry. But we could also, maybe this is setting a rather high bar by positing stream entry as the term of comparison here. But we could maybe say that the counterpart, maybe at a more elementary level, would be a person who doesn't practice the Dhamma and so doesn't have any kind of practical experience, doesn't develop. Maybe they observe sila or the precepts, morality, but they don't make the development to the effort to develop samadhi and panya, concentration and wisdom. So they have just extensive book learning, but no personal experience of cultivation. So that would be a person who thunders, since they can recite the Dhamma, but they don't let out the rain of the Dhamma through personal experience of cultivation. Okay, then we have the person who reigns but does not thunder. So this would be the person who doesn't have textual mastery, who doesn't know the discourses very well, but they have practical experience of cultivation and realization, at least at a high level, the attainment of stream entry. So that would be a person who doesn't reign, one who reigns but does not thunder. And we find an interesting contrast of these 2 types of persons using different similes in the Dhammapada, in the first chapter of the Dhammapada. Let's take a look at that. This will be the last two verses in the first chapter of the Dhammapada. So verses 19 and 20. So the first verse goes, Bahum piche sanghitang basamano natakaro hoti naropamato gopovagavo ganayam paresam nabhagavasa manyasa hoti. So even if one is able to recite many suttas or much of the canonical texts, but one is not a practitioner, but is negligent or heedless, then one is like a cowherd who counts the cows of others. One does not partake of the spiritual life. So here the simile is the cowherd who counts the cows of others. And then the counterpart to this, it doesn't have a simile. So, but it goes that even if one can recite just a little bit of the sacred texts, but one is a practitioner of the Dhamma, one who abandons lust, hate, and delusion, who has correct wisdom and is completely liberated in mind, one who does not cling to anything here or beyond, then one partakes of the spiritual life. Okay, then we have the one who neither thunders nor rains. So someone doesn't master the Dhamma, doesn't master the scriptures, and doesn't have any experiential realization. And then we have the fourth person is the one who masters the sacred texts and has experiential realization. Okay, so those are the four types of persons in this simile. And then we have another sutta with a different simile illustrating the same kind of points. I don't know if you have experience with this in your home, but there are four kinds of mice. So one that makes a hole, a mouse hole, but does not live in it. The one that lives in a hole but does not make the hole. The one that neither makes a hole nor lives in the hole, and the one who makes the hole and lives in it. So those are the four kinds of mice. Okay, then comes the explanation. So what is the person who makes a hole but does not live in it? This is the person who masters the Dhamma but does not have the experiential realization. So making the whole is compared to memorizing, learning the scriptures by memory and being able to recite them back from memory. But one doesn't live in it. That means one doesn't put it into practice and attain realization. Okay, the one who does not make the whole, but lives in it. So this is a person who doesn't master the Dhamma. So that's like not making the whole. But one maybe one finds a hole that was made by another mouse, and then or just a naturally occurring hole, and one goes to live in it. So that is the person who going to live in the hole, that is attaining the experiential realization. Then the person who neither, the mouse who neither makes the hole nor lives in it, that is the person who doesn't master the Dhamma intellectually and doesn't have experiential realization. And the one who both makes the whole and lives in it, that's the person who masters the Dhamma and attains experiential realization. Okay, so those are the two suttas concerned with this contrast, learning coupled with or without realization. Now we come to the next theme or topic, which deals with the relationship between, it's discussing a monk and the contrast of his manner of comporting himself, the way he conducts himself, and the question whether or he has or does not have realization. And so we have three suttas with three similes, different similes, illustrating that contrast. The first one I have listed here is not so clear to me. So let me start with a different one, then we could come back to this one. So we'll take the pools of water. So we have 4 pools of water. So the one that is shallow but appears to be deep, one that is a pool that is deep but appears shallow, then a pool that is shallow and appears to be shallow, and a pool that is deep and appears to be deep. And so we have 4 kinds of persons which are similar to those 4 pools of water. And now comes the elaboration. So how is a person one who is shallow but appears to be deep? And now here we have the explanation of the person's deportment. So somebody inspires confidence by his manner of going forward and returning, the way the person looks ahead and looks aside, the way the person moves their limbs, the way the person wears his robes and carries his extra robe and bowl. So these are different aspects of one's movement in day-to-day life. And the key expression here, the key description is that all of these different movements inspire confidence. What is meant by inspiring confidence? Yeah, the Pali word that's used is pasadika. And the word pasadika is related, it's based on the word pasada. And pasada signifies a trust that one places in a person as being a capable, let's say, as being a spiritually accomplished person, or being a capable and competent teacher. And so we find this word often applied to the Buddha in certain situations. For example, there's a sutta that we came across earlier in the Anguttara Nikaya. This is sutta number, I think it's 34 or 36. Yeah, 36, where a Brahmin by the name of Dona is walking along a highway, and then he sees the Buddha sitting in meditation under a tree. And when he saw the Buddha sitting there, this text describes the Buddha as So amongst the descriptive terms for the Buddha, so the Buddha is sitting there, Nisina, and he is pasadika, inspiring confidence. And then is followed by pasadaniya, which has almost the same meaning. It's hard to think of another English word to render it, but both words together suggest the idea of inspiring pasada, not just the confidence that one places in an ordinary person, but it's a religiously or spiritually based confidence related to placing trust in that person. And the other terms sort of reinforce this idea that the Buddha is described as santindriya, somebody with peaceful faculties, santa manasa, with a peaceful mind, somebody who has reached the supreme taming and tranquility. Okay, so somebody might give the impression by their manner of going and returning and so on, all of their types of movement, give the impression that they are spiritually accomplished. And what is it that imparts that inspiring manner in one's movements and so forth? If one wants to develop that inspiring manner, what kind of qualities would one be developing? Take a guess, somebody.
Noble qualities, Bhante.
Mindfulness.
Wait, one at a time. Maybe I need the hands to come up. Okay, we'll go with Gita.
Noble qualities, Bhante, of the Aryan type, or what the
Yeah,
Aryans follow.
I have something more specific in mind.
Okay.
Stephen?
Mindfulness.
Yeah, that's right. Especially moving with mindfulness. And then there's another quality that is so often yoked with mindfulness.
Grace.
Say again?
Grace.
No, there's a specific word.
It's
Osman?
clear comprehension.
Yeah, I heard it. Clear comprehension. In Pali, it's sampajanya. So often when people are in training, we're told in all of your movements, do them with mindfulness and clear comprehension. So like an ordinary person without any training will just move sort of spontaneously and naturally, will move the limbs impulsively, naturally, spontaneously, do everything naturally, impulsively, spontaneously. But a person in training, especially seeking to develop samadhi, will be, when engaged in outer activities, will be doing everything with mindfulness and clear comprehension. And so when you go to a meditation center or a monastery where there's a lot of emphasis on meditation, I remember this when I was staying in Nisaranavanaya in Sri Lanka. So when I visited there the first time, so inspired just looking at the way the monks were moving everything in the dining hall. When they get up to take their food, you could see just about everyone is getting up with mindfulness and clear comprehension, going to the table, taking each dish of food with mindfulness and clear comprehension. And so it inspires this joy and trust and confidence. Okay, but that is one thing, but the fact that a person is acting with mindfulness and clear comprehension doesn't necessarily mean that they have penetrated the Four Noble Truths. So that is the work, not of mindfulness and clear comprehension itself, but that is the work of what is involved here. Pajanati. What is involved?
Bante, I just want to ask, what is the other word? Yoni so manasikara. What's the difference between that and the clear comprehension?
Yeah, yoniso manasikara, the way I would interpret it is careful and thorough reflection or thorough and careful examination. So that is like taking maybe a theme of Dhamma and then reflecting upon it thoroughly and carefully. Or particularly, it's used when dealing with the 5 hindrances to examine and investigate how is it that the hindrances arise and how is it that one could prevent the hindrances from arising. So one does a kind of investigation, a thorough investigation to find out, let's say, the conditional relationships between different factors in the mental process. Whereas clear comprehension, the way I would understand it in the simplest terms, is knowing what one is doing as one is doing it. Well, let's say knowing what one is going to do before one does it, and knowing, that is knowing the intention to do something, and then knowing what one is doing as one is doing it.
Thank you, Bante. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so for understanding as it really is, the 4 Noble Truths, what is the key factor here? Fameng?
Oh, hi, Bande. I have a question regarding Uniso Manasikara. So what's the difference between the heedfulness and the Uniso Manasikara?
Yeah, I think maybe we have to stick with the sutta. So I'm asking the question, let's sort of stay on the track of the sutta. You could bring that question later.
Okay.
What is the factor involved in understanding the 4 Noble Truths? Very simple.
Is it wisdom?
Exactly. It's panya, wisdom. And in fact, we could see this if we know a little Pali. We see the verb to understand is pajanati. That's what we translate as understand. And this derives from the root, the prefix pa, plus the root nya. So in Sanskrit, the root is nya, nya, pa plus nya. So from pa plus nya, then in Sanskrit, when we get the verb is prajanati. But in Pali, we don't have that R, so it becomes pajanati. And we don't have the J in the root. So in Pali, we get panya as the noun. In Sanskrit, since we have the J, we have prajna. So it's wisdom. Okay, so this is the practitioner who, we could say, has mindfulness and clear comprehension, but doesn't have that wisdom that penetrates the 4 Noble Truths. And then all of the rest are just the different permutations of that. We don't have to go through them one by one. So this is the simile of pools of water. Then we have the simile of mangoes. And again, here the contrast is the mango that is unripe but appears ripe, the one that's ripe but appears unripe, the one unripe and appears unripe, and the one that is ripe and appears ripe. And so you could understand how to apply this to the 4 types of persons. So the one who has the mindful manner of doing, the inspiring manner of doing everything, is one who appears to be ripe. So from the manner, you look at the person, you think, certainly that is a noble one. Somebody who is at least a stream enterer, maybe an arahant. But in fact, he's really unripe, doesn't understand, doesn't penetrate the Four Noble Truths. Then the one who is ripe is one who penetrates the Four Noble Truths, but he appears unripe. So this is a person, it seems a little bit strange, a little also difficult to comprehend, that the person doesn't inspire confidence by his manner of going forward and returning. So it seems that the person is acting without mindfulness and clear comprehension. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain this, but maybe, okay, my guess would be that a person can become a stream enterer, and it doesn't mean that they always have mindfulness and clear comprehension in all their activities. So they might have very sharp wisdom, and through that wisdom, they're able to penetrate the Four Noble Truths. But then in their day-to-day life, they don't act with especially well-developed mindfulness and clear comprehension. So the Buddha had like many lay disciples who were stream enterers, and some of them could be like a businessman like Anatta Pindika, or a housewife like Visakha. And so when Anatta Pindika is going about his business activities, he has to act quickly and make decisions on the spur of the moment. So he can't be acting with this slow mindfulness and clear comprehension in all activities. When Visakha has many children and grandchildren, when she's looking after the household duties, she has to go to some of the servants, say, do this, do that. And so not acting with mindfulness and clear, or at least seems to be acting without mindfulness and clear comprehension. But they've developed the insight which penetrates the Four Noble Truths. And there can be monks also who go about their day-to-day activities. They don't seem to be especially mindful, but they have that insight, wisdom. I remember, I haven't looked at it in a long time, in Jack Kornfield's book it used to be called Living Buddhist Masters in the 1970s. Now all of those masters have passed away, so now it's called Living Dharma. But Jack wrote about the time when he was in Thailand as a monk, and he went to practice under a Burmese master who was living in Thailand and had a meditation center in Thailand. And he was a teacher, authorized teacher in the Mahasi Soyador system. I think his name was U Asaba. And Jack Kornfield would be in his meditation hut, and he would look out and he would see U Asaba moving about very quickly. His robe would be drooping off his shoulder, and he smoked these little Oriental cigars. And he would often be talking to lay people and laughing with them, chatting with them for a long time. And sometimes Jack at that time, he would feel quite despondent and even suspicious. How could this man be a meditation teacher when he carries on in this way? But when Jack would meet with problems in his meditation, then he would go to this Burmese master and ask for some guidance in dealing with these problems. And the master's instructions were always so precise and so accurate that confirmed his decision to stay and practice under that master. Yeah, Yeah, I remember also when I was a first year monk in Sri Lanka, I went to this meditation center called Kanduboda Meditation Center. And the person who was the man, he was the meditation master at that center. His name was Venerable Sumati Palo. And he was also another teacher authorized in the Mahasi Sayadaw system to teach. And also he didn't look to me so, he didn't seem to me so impressive. He was a short guy, a little sloppy in his manner, but his instructions were always very, very on target, despite his manner. So it seems that the fact that a person has deep experience and practice, I can't say whether he achieved realization of the Four Noble Truths or not, but the fact that a person has achieved at least enough experience and practice to be qualified as a meditation master doesn't mean that they'll always be very impressive in their deportment. And then there can be those who are very impressive in their deportment. I've seen those types, but they don't have any deep experience and practice and realization. Okay, so these are the persons similar to mangoes. Then we could just look at the first simile. Maybe you could help me with this, of the pots. So 4 kinds of pots: the one that's empty and covered, the one that's full and open, the one that's empty and open, and the one that's full and covered. Okay, the one who's empty and covered. So this is the person who inspires confidence with their manner, with their deportment, but they don't have any realization. So obviously, lack of realization is compared to being empty, but being inspired in deportment, inspiring confidence in deportment, is compared to being covered. While being full and open okay, so being full is compared to having realization, but being open is compared to not inspiring confidence in one's deportment. Yeah, so what I find puzzling was generally in our culture, American culture, we think it's a virtue to be open, since that means you're being honest, candid, truthful, not covering things up, whereas being covered means that you're being secretive, a little underhanded, a little dishonest. Yeah, so I don't quite get the point of that. Does anybody have any ideas of this, about this? Do you have the hand? Let's take Deborah. Did you want to?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bhante. If I follow what you were just saying about someone who you might say wears it well, but is not a, let's say, a good teacher, or someone who appears disheveled but is the good teacher, and I apply that to the pots, I'm thinking as a cook, if I see a lid on a pot, I assume it's full. There's a meal. If I see a lid, off the pot, I don't assume that. So I'm kind of just following your logic and applying it to the pots. And it seems to be about our perception of the person, the cloud, the pot, not, and that perception is flawed.
Actually, that's what you said, when you first said seems to be a good way to handle this. So when you see the pot that's covered, then you assume that the food inside is cooked, that is full of food. Yeah. But when the pot is open, then you assume the food is still being cooked. But the contrast is between being empty and full. Let's see, maybe Geeta, did you have some idea about this?
Yeah, I was thinking, Bhante, of humility. The word humility pops in. Like, I was thinking if someone is, has the panya, the wisdom, they would be sort of quiet, because all through the veins of the sutta, Buddha talks about don't go and announce yourself to these achievements, just more so to practice with humbleness and humility. So I was thinking of the open and the closed pot. So if it's closed, it means you're more down to earth and humble about, whatever you are pursuing and doing within the Dharma. And an open pot can be also an empty vessel, where people go around talking and claiming things, and maybe that's not correct. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Bhante?
I don't really know, actually. That's why I'm trying to get other people to speak. How about Samantha? Samantha?
Yes, Banti. Actually, I think it could be my hand up from the previous section.
Oh,
Sorry, but I'll give it a go. Pot full. I was just wondering, a pot that is with wisdom is the way leading to cessation, and who is full of knowledge, like the other person was saying, and is I suppose full and nothing to hide, and just without any defilements, and just I don't know, just all the dhammic qualities, I suppose.
Okay. Anyways, I'll just say maybe this. I want to go on in this chapter, so we'll just say that we could offer various theories and explanations, but it's not immediate, at least to me, it's not immediately evident. We all have to sort of speculate about the intention here. Okay, I want to go on. So we've covered the suttas with the first two groups of similes, the second group of similes. Now, the third group is interesting. Here we have two suttas that deal with the relationship of, we say, the relationship of a leader and the followers. And I think we have some contemporary applications of this, 108 and 109. Four kinds of bulls. So the bull that is angry with its own with its own cattle, but not towards the cattle of others. The one who's angry towards the cattle of others, but not towards its own cattle. The one who is angry both with its own cattle and with the cattle of others, and the one who's angry neither with its own cattle nor the cattle of others. And then there's four kinds of people similar to these four kinds of cattle. So let's get them. We could go directly to the elaboration. So how is a person wrathful towards his own cattle, but not towards the cattle of others? So someone intimidates his own retinue, his own cabinet, his own party members, but not the retinues of others. So that's the person like the bull, wrathful towards his own cattle, but not towards the cattle of others. someone is wrathful or angry with the cattle of others, but not towards his own cattle. So someone intimidates the retinues of others, or in our own culture, the members of the other political party, but not the members of his own party. So that's the person wrathful towards the cattle of others, but not towards his own cattle. The one who's wrathful, angry, both with his own cattle and with the cattle of others. So this is the one who intimidates both, or denounces both the retinues of others and also his own retinue. So he, in our own situation, the one who attacks, criticizes, denounces, condemns the members of the opposite political party. And then if his members of his own party don't agree with him 100%, question his judgment and his decisions, then he turns against them and fires them or criticizes them. And then we have the person who's wrathful neither towards his own cattle nor towards the cattle of others. So that's somebody who does not intimidate or condemn his own retinue or the retinues of others. So even if his own followers criticize him and correct him and question him, so he doesn't get angry with them and denounce them, condemn them, dismiss them, fire them. But if somebody criticizes, he's open to criticism. If somebody questions, he's open to accept the questions. And similarly, when others criticize, he doesn't get angry, but he might reply to the criticisms and try to defend himself, or else even accept the criticism from the other parties. So that's the way a person is wrathful, neither towards his own cattle nor towards the cattle of others. So this very, very useful advice for us, even outside of this political framework, since we all naturally we tend to fall into groups, and then we find people in other groups, different communities. And if we get into the position of leadership in a group, sometimes we get criticized by people from the other groups, the rival groups. Sometimes we're criticized from our own followers. So the best way, the best approach is to be patient and accepting of criticism, no matter where it comes from, without getting angry at those who criticize us, without getting upset and angry with those who question us, but always be ready to accept criticism and correction, whether from our own followers, the followers of others. And then we'll just take one more sutta, then I'll jump to number 110. I have two suttas which don't fall neatly into any of these groups, but number 110 is interesting, the last one. This is compared to types of vipers, poisonous snakes. So the snake whose venom comes up quickly, but it's not virulent, not too destructive. The one whose venom is virulent, that is very destructive, but it doesn't come up quickly. The one whose poison comes up quickly and it's also very destructive. And the one whose venom doesn't come up quickly and is not too destructive. So we have four people who are like that. So the first, the one whose venom comes up quickly, but it's not virulent. So this is like a person who gets angry very quickly, but the anger doesn't linger for a long time. And what I'd say also, my own elaboration on this, the anger can come up quickly, but not only doesn't it persist for a long time, but it doesn't turn into hatred. So I distinguish anger and hatred. So anger means you don't like something that somebody does, you don't like something that somebody says, but you don't turn it into a sense of enmity against the person themselves. But it doesn't turn into hostility towards the person, but you still can like the person, appreciate the person, even love the person, but they do things that make you get angry. So in this case, the person often becomes angry, but the anger doesn't linger, doesn't last, and it doesn't turn into a hatred. And when it turns into hatred, then it creates the desire to injure the person, to harm the person in some way. Okay, then the person whose venom is virulent, destructive, but doesn't come up quickly. So this is a person who doesn't become angry very quickly, but when that anger does arise, it persists, and then I would add, it turns into hatred. So generally the person is very patient, maybe with little disagreeable things that people do to him or to say to him. But if somebody does something which really touches them at the core, then that anger comes up, boils up. Maybe it's most destructive when it doesn't express itself in an outburst of angry speech or a physical action, but the anger is suppressed, it rises, it's suppressed, and then it just persists over a period of time. And it's like the pus of a boil, which is not released, then that pus or the wound can become infected and can cause some serious harm, even can cause sepsis within a limb. So it's like the anger comes up in the mind. It doesn't result in a quick outburst of anger, but it remains quietly below the surface, and then it turns into hatred, and then it can become very destructive. Okay, then a person whose anger comes up quickly and becomes destructive, that's the person who becomes angry, and the anger lingers and turns into hatred. And then the ideal is the person whose anger doesn't arise often, doesn't come up quickly, and the anger doesn't linger for a long time. So that would be the ideal person, the person who is patient. And if the anger does come up, it doesn't linger, but quickly vanishes. Okay, so those are I won't take the other suttas. You can just read them on your own. Maybe we have about 10 minutes for some questions. So Geeta spoke several times today, so we'll take Ravi, Sarah. Ravi, sir.
Yes, thank you. Bhante, it's about the 9 types of categories you mentioned, Suttam, Geyam, and so forth.
Yeah.
What category does Abhidhamma belong to? And also, am I right in thinking that Vinaya doesn't belong to any of these categories because it's not considered to be Dhamma? Thank you, Bhante.
I think these would be considered 10 categories of, maybe call it sutta material, rather than Vinaya or Abhidhamma material. So the commentary wants to be all inclusive. So it classifies the Abhidhamma, where did it put it? I think it put the Abhidhamma under Vyakarana as explanation. And I mean, historically, we say according to historical scholarship, the Abhidhamma was not actually spoken by the Buddha during his lifetime. So it wouldn't come in these 9 categories. But basically the point is that the 9 categories are categories of sutta style teaching. Okay, Franz.
Oops.
Yeah.
Hi, Bhante. Okay. Lately, I've been reading Anguttara Nikaya number 1061, which talk about nutriment.
Right.
And when I look at this group of sutta, I kind of think that all of the elements of the nutriments are addressed kind of one by one here. So for example, when you talk about deportment versus insight, it's like the difference between how much sampajana versus how much yoniso manasikara. And so like someone whose deportment is very good, they have sampajana all the time, but
Yeah.
someone who developed yoniso manasikara more,
Yeah.
they have wisdom into the teaching. So I kind of associate that particular sutta to this group of suttas here. I wonder whether that is a correct reading.
Yeah, I don't remember the details of that sutta offhand, but the point that you made is actually quite good. Let me get the sutta of that type. Yeah, it seems that this was a good point, that sampajanya, that's clear comprehension, is associated more with the deportment. So that would be, in fact, we have in the Satipatthana Sutta, when the Buddha is explaining the practice of clear comprehension, he says that somebody acts with clear comprehension when going forward and returning, when looking ahead and looking aside, when moving the limbs, when wearing the robes and carrying the extra robe and bowl. Yeah, so sampajanya is connected with deportment, clear comprehension with deportment, whereas yoniso manasikara, careful attention, thorough attention, would be associated of sort of like the preparation, the preparatory stage for the arising of panya or wisdom. And in the second sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, the Sabbasava Sutta, the Buddha actually connects yoniso manasikara with the realization of the Four Noble Truths. Instead of using the verb pajanati in connection with the Four Noble Truths, he says that the person correctly or has the thorough, yeah, I won't open it, it takes time, but the person has the, attends carefully or reflects wisely on this is suffering, this is the origin, this is the cessation, this is the path. Yeah, so that's a good point. Okay, we go on. Matthew, when you finish speaking, you lower the hand. Otherwise, I think the hand is still raised.
Thank you, Bhante. Yes, Bhante, my question is about the simile of the mango. The third one, the person who is wise within but doesn't appear so without, could refer to people who behave, who are humble or unassuming in their daily work, like say a janitor in a school who goes about his work very mindfully, but nobody is overlooked and nobody's aware of their qualities, or the healthcare workers now in the pandemic who are have to be very careful and work with clear comprehension, etc., who are normally not, to be even recognized for the work they do. So it could be that sort of person who works, with humility. And
yeah, so I would say the person who is the healthcare worker who has to work very carefully. Maybe this question of inspiring confidence in the sense of a spiritual trust wouldn't arise with them, but they do have to go about their work with a great deal of clear comprehension. So it wouldn't be inspiring that religious trust or spiritual confidence, but if you see a healthcare worker working with a lot of carefully, with clear comprehension, it would inspire maybe trust in them as a responsible caregiver or responsible healthcare worker, where if you see a person just leaving test tubes around, spilling test tubes, and not cleaning up the table where they're doing the work, then you wouldn't have trust in them or confidence. And so you would move over to
Thank
another
you.
healthcare worker.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, let us see. Okay, Anne Fong.
Thank you, Bhante. I just wonder if you could help us to have a practical advice on how to be able to develop and see the third noble truth, the cessation of dukkha. Thank you, Bhante.
I think that is a question that really is in a different area, but to see, just one doesn't see the cessation of dukkha apart from seeing all four noble truths. So the task that one sets oneself is to see the four noble truths, and then to see all four of them with this wisdom, this deep wisdom. One has to undertake the practice of insight meditation based on some foundation of calm or concentration. So basically the method for realizing the Four Noble Truths is to develop calm or samadhi and panya, wisdom or insight. Okay, we'll take one more question, then we'll have to end for the day. Samantha?
Thank you, Bhante. I just want to clarify in practical terms what this, the meaning of mindfulness with clear comprehension and wisdom, what that actually means. So if you're going through your daily activities with mindfulness, obviously that doesn't mean, you know, you can be mindful in robbing a bank or stealing something. So it's mindfulness with wisdom. So does that mean that whatever action you're carrying out, you're realizing that it's arising, passing, the anicca nature of the action, and that it's a process of cause and effect. And what is that wisdom? What are we trying to? What does that actually mean, Bhante?
Yeah, that would be the arising of the panya or wisdom. But one could act with mindfulness and clear comprehension without necessarily having that wisdom factor at the level of seeing into the impermanence of the activities. So the clear comprehension in that case is, as I expressed it earlier, it's knowing what one is doing as one is doing it.
Yeah, so then you see the impermanence and the non-self and the dukkha of each action or whatever action you're doing. Is that what the wisdom is?
That would be the wisdom aspect, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see if Ravi, Sarah, if you have a quick question, then we could take it.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. Bhante, forgive me if I misunderstood you, Bhante, but did you say earlier that the Abhidhamma was not spoken by the Buddha?
That's pretty much the decision or the conclusion reached on the basis of historical scholarship. We know pretty well, it's been traced by historically oriented scholars that the Abhidhamma emerged through a historical period of historical development over several generations.
So, Bhante, the story about Lord Buddha going to the Tusita heaven, I think, and then preaching Abhidhamma has proven to be incorrect, Bhante? Like, how do you know?
Yeah,
is it possible to give some?
Yeah, it's pretty much I would call it it seems quite possible that during a rains retreat, the Buddha did go to the Tusita heaven, or I think it's the Tavatingsa heaven, and preach to the devas there. Because that seems to be a common tradition amongst several of the early Buddha schools. But the idea that the topic that he spoke on when he went to the top of things of heaven was the Abhidharma. That is specific to the Theravada school, and it comes in the commentaries. There's not a canonical basis for that. Okay, we're going to have to end for the day here. So we'll end. I'll just do a quick and short sharing of the merits. First, some announcements, just a quick announcements. So we have Sunday, we have the group meditation from 7 to 8 p.m. conducted by Bhante Mangala, with an additional half-hour period from 8 to 8:30 for questions. And then on Wednesday evening, we have the group meditation, again from 7 to 8 p.m. with myself guiding the meditation. And I think that's it. Okay, so we're going to do a quick sharing of the merits. So we put the hands together in Anjali. I'll just recite rather quickly. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Sasanam. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakantu Desanam. Akasata Jabumata Deva Naga Mahedika Punyantang Manumoditva Chirang Rakantu Mam Parang Bhavagupadaya Vichihitato Etantare Satakayupapanna Rupya Rupicha Sanya Sanino Dukha Pumuchantu Pusantu Rupi.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
May
Thank
Bante
you,
always
Bante.
Thank you,
happy and
Bante.
Enjoy the good night. Good health to you, Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
Okay, stay safe.
Thank you so much, Bante.
Thank you, Bante. Thank you.
Thank you, Bante.
Sadhu, Bante. Sadhu.
Saranai
Thank you,
Bante.
Bante.
Thank you,
Thank
Bhante.
you, Bante.
Thank you.